Super 7 ThunderCats, the ultimate heroes.
Okay,
We'll
so
get there. All right,
if
let's
you
jump
if
in and
you're
have some
ready,
fun.
okay, we are ready to have some fun.
I'm always
Are
ready.
you?
Come
Are
on.
you ready?
For you, I'm
Okay,
always ready. I'm
awesome.
ready.
Welcome, Brian. We are about to start our first Thunder Talk for 2025. It's been a while. How have
It
you
has been a
been?
while. I'm impressed with the haircut, you know? You're like ready for summer. It's all like, going. You're like, you're tan, you've got your floral print shirt on. You're like, I'm going to the beach after this. This is summer Eggman.
Yes,
We're,
it's
we're out in the
definitely
middle of
summer.
winter here with my puffer on in the office, just going, anyways, I got to grow this out to save heat. You know,
It's excruciatingly hot here. It's been horribly hot this past few weeks. But I'll exchange this. I'll send you a bit of the heat, and then you can send me some cold, and we'll survive for a few more days.
we'll even it out. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think that's how it works, but that would be nice. I like the sentiment.
Yeah, well, there we go. So let's talk about something else than the weather, because we've got
Yes.
lots of interesting things to talk about. We've got Thundercats to talk about, and I'm going to start right away with Wave 12. Wave 12 is finally
Okay.
here. It's live.
Finally
It's up
here.
for pre-order.
Yes, the wave that was supposed to come out sort of ended last year, and then what we realized is just people really do not do well with pre-orders that sort of happen basically Black Friday through the month of December. It's like my money is spent elsewhere, man. I can't do this. So we pushed it out. We just dropped it live. I think it's a fun wave. I think it's got some cool characters and some, once again, a little bit unexpected. Whoa, left turn, maybe a little bit, but I think generally the response seems to be that people are pretty happy with the wave. And
Yes.
I don't know. Let's start with your questions. Let me talk about it. You have questions about it. Let's go the other way.
Okay, so this is definitely a unique wave. There's obviously, if you're a big Thundercats fan like you are familiar with all of them. If you're a casual Thundercats fan, you might remember one or two from an episode here and there, especially since one of them appeared only once in the whole series. But there was a two of him, but we'll get to him now. This wave has got 3 SKUs, but one of them is a 2-pack. So that is, of course, Safari Joe and Mule.
Yeah.
And then was Mule's inclusion always a given when you were planning Safari Joe? Was he always going to be there?
Yeah, because you kind of can't have Safari Joe without Mule. You got to have the projector part. You got to have everything. Like he's, they're a unit. It's it's R2D2 to C3PO.
Exactly.
It's 7 Zark 7 to G-Force. You got to have Mule. So it was always in the plan that if you're going to have Safari Joe, you have to have Mule.
Okay, that's fantastic, because this is the first time that he's made his debut in toy form, which is really exciting for collectors. Did the pricing on these larger items affect the reason that there are only 3 SKUs versus 4, or was there a 4th character that you planned to be included in the wave?
Well, I mean, I think we've talked about this a couple times. If you really think about, our production timelines being a year plus, kind of thing, we're working. So what came out now was originally going to be coming out late November, early December, and which meant we were really beginning the planning of it, quite frankly, in the end of 2023. And at that time, I think all of us were really talking about how, like, hey, there seems to really be a need to kind of like slow down on the dollars and cents that we're asking from people and how often we're coming to people for, money. Like we went from like, hey, how fast can you give me Thundercats or any toy pre-order, quite honestly, to I'm in pre-order fatigue. There's too much product and it's coming out too fast and I can't afford it all. So we slowed down the cadence a little bit. And then we start talking about bringing down, what is if I'm asking you to collect this line, how much money are you having to pay at a time? I think we've talked about, anybody that's watched our interviews, I think you can probably go back 2 or 3 and see us really talking about this, 18 months ago when we're all like, hey, like it's a little tricky out there. And so we're still sort of, downstream from that, I feel like there's people that are like, hey, I'm feeling like I might want to be back up into 4 figures again. But we'll sort of see. But we felt like, especially with Cruncher being so big and then Safari Joe basically having, like you said, it's a 2-pack or 1.5-pack. What is the total dollar spend? And ideally, we're keeping that as close to, if it's 4 figures at 55, it's 220. If all of a sudden this start climbing up into 245, then you start adding shipping and tax, it just started to feel a lot. So instead, we just opted to rearrange the waves a little bit and cut it down to 3 figures so that you could have, Safari Joe with Mule, and you could have this gigantic Crusher, and the way that you sort of want them, but also make it so it doesn't break the bank at the end of the day.
Okay. So the next wave, can we assume that it's going to be 3 figures only?
I can, if I go off screen and do some looking around, I can, because it's moved all around a little bit, I can sit here and go, exactly how many it is. Where am I? There's so many. I have 8 million docs open here. I probably should have had this at the ready, shouldn't I? Somebody right now is watching, going like, literally, dude, we're watching your brain work in slow motion. This is terrifying.
Just share your screen, Brian, just for a second.
Right.
We can screenshot it. We can deal with it later.
Yeah. How about no? Let me just triple check where we're at, because there's so much stuff in here about so much different. Okay. This is 3, right? I guess because I'm also thinking about what's happening as we get into PR and stuff like that. So the next wave is sort of a breakup. I think it'll make sense. Not to get ahead of ourselves. The next wave will be revealed on the issue, the cover of the next Toy Collector magazine. If everybody's familiar with Toy Collector, Blake Wright's wonderful magazine. It'll be revealed on the cover of Toy Collector. And I think when you see it, it's sort of a, I'm not giving it away. So I think when you see it, you'll be like, oh, I know what's happened here, and I know what's happened here. I see how this works. But as far as formal waves, yeah, we're looking at waves of 3 for the next couple.
Okay. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I have to add, it does make it a little bit more affordable. It sounds horrible to say that, but especially for fans overseas, buying everything. I mean, my currency versus the dollar is way worse than what it was a year and 2 years ago. So it does get more expensive every year. So it's actually a nice little breather, but you're still getting your figures, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking off the side of the screen, and there's quite, we're scripted out. I say scripted out because we're already in process on some of this, but we're scripted out 5 more waves. So, that may take two more years, exactly. So there's plenty to come. There's plenty to come from the world of ThunderCats.
Okay, fantastic. So now we've touched on this before, when it comes to a figure's LJN version. I know some of these LJN versions are drastically different. But a character like Safari Joe, does it warrant having an LJN variant for him? What do you think about that? I mean,
I don't know if I think about Safari Joe, if I'm thinking about the LJN version, other than the gloves like being bright blue and then obviously the gun being radically different, I don't know. The toy itself isn't terribly different. It's pretty much the same. It's kind of, maybe a slight change to the brown or whatever, on the boots and stuff. But I think the LJN, you're talking about bright blue gloves versus dark blue gloves. And really the accessories are the big difference. I don't know that there's a fundamental change other than that. That doesn't seem to be big enough to me to warrant a whole release for it. But
Yes.
quite frankly, I hadn't even really got there because it was like, at first blush, they're kind of the same.
Okay. Yeah, they do look. I mean, if you look at Mongor, he's basically it's maybe just a little different expression in the face, which is obviously more toy-like and more
Yeah.
plainer than the detailed one that's cartoon accurate. But I don't need a toy version of Mongor. He can fit with either or, whether I
Yeah.
want the toy version or the two.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes they're radically different, and that gives you that really cool opportunity. But for the most part, and we've done that. But when they're pretty darn close, I think you're splitting hairs. It really just comes back down to, like, if we were going to get down to that splitting hair zone, would be like, hey, we put out Safari Joe, people bought it. 2 years later, like Safari Joe's selling for, I'm making up $400 in the secondary market, and everybody's freaking out because they can't find Safari Joe. Well, then we might be like, all right, how do we bring Safari Joe back? But we also want to keep what you've already bought as being special. So then we might do it. But I would say right now, I wouldn't be looking at anything like that. I don't think it warrants it.
Okay. Now his AI robot Mule. What is that? That looks like a complicated figure to design. What is his articulation like?
So he's got sort of, neck, if you will, articulation. There's I don't know, you can't call it a torso, but there's a torso articulation. And then the arms, he's articulated at the shoulders, the elbows, and the wrists. So the arms fully move. Really, the only thing is, as he doesn't really have it at the base,
Okay.
But it's sort of like waist up articulation
Okay. Okay.
on that little robot, little steam train.
So, in terms of another character that's there is Cruncher, which we mentioned. Now, it's finally we've got the Berserkers that's back in the game. So it's quite something because these Berserkers, they were quite different when they had the LJN toy versions versus
Right.
what these new cartoon accurate versions. This is the first time that we've got the cartoon version of a character like Cruncher. But they are very different in the toy form. Do they warrant a variant somewhere down the line? Or
I mean, you would get into some paint with the metallic silver, but I don't think you'd want that scale change in some of the other stuff. So once again, we're just getting Cruncher out for the first time. I think this is the version of Cruncher that maybe I'm wrong here, that people want. And it's like, let's get this Cruncher out. If it turns out to be a thing where it's like, oh, we vastly underestimated the demand for Cruncher, then I think we would probably sit down and go back and look at it and say, okay, how can we make Cruncher available again, or get it something where people can get it? But the toy Cruncher, nostalgia aside, is like, oh, that doesn't really live up to the character that well, does it? That's just sort of me. It's like, okay, it's a toy, it's one thing, but like for what he's supposed to be and what he's supposed to look like, it's just not quite there. But we're off on a tangent as well. I think right now, like I said, it's like, here's your cartoon Cruncher. I think he looks great. I think he looks right in line with what we would want him to look like. And most of the time, you start out with this stuff going like, all right, we're making that version. We're not really thinking about all the other variations we can make of that stuff, at least not in the beginning. I think it's right now, it's like, what's the best version we can make today?
okay. So this is now throwing it off completely, but when you have a character that has a bug that you could later on replicate in different versions, like the Burbles, for example, that bug has the same use for any other Burble except for when it has a different face or maybe a little something around the shoulder or anything. Do you plan ahead, like, listen, we can use this here like that in multiple ways, and what's the best way that we can do that?
I think the Burbles are a different ask, because there are lots of Burbles. So like, obviously going into that, we were thinking about, okay, is there a time and a place where other Burbles come into play, as opposed to just Robert Bill. But in some, for the most part, we think about it, but we don't, unless it's like hard planned, we're not putting it in the mix per se. Like we're really starting with, what are characters you don't have? So if like we were just talking, like if I'm looking, because they're off screen over here now, like all the future waves, like it's not reuse and all that. It's like, here's characters you haven't had before. Here's another set of characters you haven't had before. Here's another set of
Wow.
characters you before.
Okay. Okay, you hear that, guys? We've got some
Yeah,
brand new characters coming. Okay, that's
yeah,
exciting.
yeah. And usually, like I said, usually when there's those moments where when we're kind of coming back to a figure, generally speaking, it's been that more sort of, you don't need it to feel complete with the line. It's that San Diego Comic-Con. It's, some sort of exclusive here or there, where that's fun for the person that really wants all the variations and is really excited by that stuff. But it's not, oh, I missed this and now my line is incomplete.
Yes, makes sense. So, this cruncher, you said he's big. So, how big is he in comparison to existing figures that we've got?
Well, he's only about an inch taller. Well, I mean, an inch is still a decent amount of size, but the width and the thickness of him is massive. So in that regard, he's huge. I don't know if anybody's he's not as big as Sergeant Bananas. I don't know if anybody's looked. I say Sergeant Bananas. I'm not supposed to say Sergeant Bananas. I'm sorry. Gorilla. If anybody's looked at our TMNT line on Gorilla, I mean, it's astonishingly large, but just how how like Scythe has that bulk,
Yes.
Cruncher is bigger than Scythe. He's got it. The bulk of Cruncher is huge.
Okay. That's exciting. He's gonna have a presence on the shelf, that's for sure.
Yes, and he's supposed to.
Yes. So what you guys did with your solicitations is rather clever, because the vintage toy had that art of Cruncher basically just grabbing Lionel and squeezing him until he fainted. And you mimicked that. Was that deliberate in your marketing plan when you revealed this?
Yeah, I think when we started that, we said, hey, here's a vintage reference to work from, but then our photographer kind of did his take on it. We didn't sort of like slavishly recreate it. Part of that is the distortions you can get in illustration that don't actually work in real life. Like sometimes where it's like, oh, look at this. And it's like, well, actually, I can't get that, kind of thing. But he used it as a jumping off point. It was still like, it is an homage to it, but I think at the same time, if you look at them side by side, you're like, oh, they're still fairly different. It was an interesting idea, but like I said, I don't try to get in the way too much with Johnny Wu, our photographer. I let him do his thing because he does beautiful, beautiful work. And this is what we're talking about. All right, I'll use that as a jumping off point and come up with a really cool photo. So it's like, all right, you go knock that out.
Yes, because it's still something fresh and new, but it's still reminiscent of that vintage memories that you've got from the toy and the artwork back in the day. So
yes.
Another character that you have in this new wave is Willa's sister, Nayda. I never thought we would see her. I was really wishing very hard that we would see Nayda, and I was hoping we'd see her, but I was thinking there might be so many other characters out there, which there definitely still is, that people would rather want first. But it is so exciting because she's an essential character. She's part of the League of Third Earth. And this type of character, would you say that when you reveal this type of character, that it's fan service, fan demand, things that you hear of, or things that you think is important to be included that the general collector might not be aware of?
I don't know. It's a weird, theoretically, I'm hoping the entire line is fan service, right?
Yes.
And we're fans too. And when I'm sitting here saying I've got the next 5 lines scripted out, that doesn't mean that we're not listening to people, but we're also way ahead. So when we decided to make Willa, we're also like, if you're going to make Willa, you got to make Nayda. So like, where do you put her? Obviously Willa's, the priority. So, you know, once we decided we're making Willa, we were also going to make her. And so it was just a matter of like, which wave does she fit in with? How long's it been since you got that one? You know, because sometimes you don't want them right after each other. You want there to be a little bit of a break. There's all this sort of, we go through all these ruminations and permutations and discussions, and it's all, you can justify any of it. You could say she needs to be in the next wave because you follow right on, or oh no, she needs to be a little longer so there's a break in between and you build up excitement. Like, both answers are right. So in the end, you know, this stuff we talk about and rearrange fairly regularly. But it wasn't like, oh, hey, everybody's screaming for her, let's add her in. She was always part of the plan.
Okay. Okay. So basically, like with the Berserkers, I mean, for a while we thought there was not going to be any more, and then we got surprised with the Lunatics, and then we got 3 of basically 4 of them so far. But it was really a nice surprise to finally get the next Berserker. So I know you mentioned Josh wanted top spinner a while back, and hopefully we'll see him in the next wave or 2 or 3 somewhere down the line.
You'll see him at some point.
Good, excellent. So now with the Warrior Maidens, now you've got 2 of them, the leaders. Now you've got the basic buck for these. Would we be able to see army builders of the Warrior Maidens, or is that not something you think is as important now?
You know, it's an interesting thing. You know, obviously we did it with the reptilians. We did the army builders there, and that worked pretty well. There's been a lot of, you know, with all the mutants, there's been a lot of, you know, same thing. Are you going to make all the Jackalmen? Are you going to make, you know, the Warrior Maidens? Are you going to do this? I think at some point it's worth talking about. I haven't heard a lot of people asking for that, you know, sort of the same thing with the mutants as a whole. Like, I think people really responded, for whatever reason, people really respond to the reptilians, but I haven't heard or seen a lot of demand outside of that where people are like, we really need these for army building too. I think it could be cool, but I'm not 100% sure that everybody's looking for it at this point. And, you know, if we're going to make something like that available, if you're talking about, if I'm speaking about it from a line management point of view, it's, once again, if I'm going to introduce that, then once again, I'm asking for that much money from the customer. So what else am I going to remove to make room for it? And so right now, those haven't been prioritized. If all of a sudden we are getting flooded with, you know, commentary saying that's what people want, then, you know, we'll take a look at it. But right now, that has, the demand seems to be like, I would rather have new characters than army builders.
Okay. Yes, I agree. I want Jagara first, please. Thank you very much. We can talk about that afterward. I'll get to the Warrior Maidens later. That's fine. That's fine. We've got the 2 most important ones right now sorted.
Yes.
So with this wave 12, we've got the super pack, which is so cool. It's got Mamra's disguise, where he was Nayda in the Mask of Gorgon. That head alone just makes me want to jump at this wave. That is like, now I need to get a second Nayda just to have my variant of Mamra, because he likes to be all different kinds of characters. I've got him set up as these different versions here at the back. But that is really so exciting. But these super packs really are something interesting. Since you launched them, do you think that this has pulled in a lot of people or a lot of buyers more than what it was before? And what has the reaction been for your business?
I don't have a definitive answer there on what it has or has not changed in terms of bringing people to it or not. Obviously, not to sound crass, but the goal is, obviously, if we're selling these ourselves versus other places, there's a little bit more room, you know, to work with, because a discounted, more wholesale oriented price, you know, we make X dollars versus if we make it if we sell it ourselves. So ideally, it's a fine line. I really want to do great service in supporting wonderful retailers like Big Bad Toy Store or Entertainment Earth or whatever. And they're not getting a typical discount on those. It's a reduced discount, but it's still discounted nonetheless because they have their customers that are loyal to them, and they should be for any other reason. But we also want people to buy from us. And what is that benefit? So, I mean, anybody can do the math, but the more you buy from us, the more room we have to make more stuff. So I'm like, we can make additional parts if we can get our sales at Super7 to be at a certain level. And so that's the premium from buying from us. And then hopefully, over time, that becomes something where, if more of that shifts over, then we can add more stuff. It's trust me, I want to add stuff everywhere, but that doesn't always come out to the same thing.
Well, the fun thing also when you buy from Super7 is that you get it first. So if you buy from Super7,
yes,
you will be shipped your item first before any other retailer receives theirs and ships it out.
Yes, that is
so
true. That is true, 100%. But like I said, I don't. Yes, I want you to buy it from me, but I don't want to do it necessarily at the expense of somebody like Big Bad. It's a really difficult sort of proposition to talk about because Joel and Big Bad Toy Store have been a wonderful supporter of the brand since day one, and they run a wonderful business. But at the same time, please buy from me.
Yes.
I don't know how you say that. You're like, we're really good friends with this person, but I want to win,
You can keep giving them these awesome exclusives that you've done in the past, which is fun.
Ultimately, usually that's what happens, is that then we give Big Bad an exclusive, and really that's sort of how we balance the playing field to really help support his brand and his store. We're using them as the example here, but very much so. Like, I can't say enough good things about them as an organization. They're great. Everybody over there is great. Eddie's great. Rand's great. They're all great.
So,
sorry, I didn't mean to turn this into a Big Bad Toy Store advertisement.
No, that's fine. We'll have it flashing right over here.
Do I get a promo code with that where I'm going to get a kickback now? I should ask for that.
Yes, we'll call Joel afterwards and ask him. So with these super packs now, they are going for a lot of money on the secondary market. So if you haven't bought them yet,
I've never looked at that. Are they for real?
Yes. This latest one is going for the first one that came on went for $140.
Okay.
So yes, that's basically almost more than half of the wave itself. But people are making their money off of it. So would you ever consider releasing the super packs that you have done as a separate wave completely in the future?
I feel like that would be disingenuous. Like, it's like we had a deal. We made you something special. Thank you for supporting me. Everybody had a chance to buy in. We didn't tell anybody they couldn't. So for me to come back later and say, that special thing I gave you because you supported us, I'm going to give it to everybody now, feels disingenuous.
Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Yeah. It's not that, I mean, it's this fine line, because part of me is like, my job, as we've talked many times, my job isn't to make this hard for you. I want you to be able to buy my toys. I want you to be able to collect the line. I want you to be excited about it. But there is a certain point, which is like, it was up. You had the opportunity to buy it. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, and it might be a very sad reason, like, I don't know, like maybe I'm making it up. This sounds terrible. This is not even a good example. Like maybe my house just burned down in LA and I didn't get to order it. Like, that's a terrible thing, but at a certain point, like there's also like, but it happened and now it's special. And that's why you have it. And I feel like there's a fine line there. And that's why, once again, it's open for 30 days. Like you've got your time to get there. And I apologize for somebody that maybe is just jumping into the line now and wasn't able to buy it back then. But that also happened a year ago. That happened 2 years ago. That happened whenever. Like I can't go back for everyone, unfortunately.
So the packaging on this wave is a little bit different. It's got that lovely art in the front now, next to the name of the character. What was the reason for this new look?
We try to keep everything consistent. Obviously, as we've gone away from the outer sleeves, there's still sort of some of that pretty picture stuff that gets lost in here. And so we're just like, how do we bring it back in, but make it feel like it's still part of the same? I feel like they'll hang really well together, but it is, I would argue it's a little bit of an improvement over what you've had in the past, if you take the sleeve off.
Yes, I have to say that this is, I actually wish all the others were looking like this, because that is really so
See,
cool.
that's where you get into this thing of like, do we change it? Do we not? Yeah. And we have all that rigmarole, but in the end, it's like, what's the best thing we can do? Well, there's a better idea now. Now that slipcase is gone, we've got this idea. And I think that this is a better place to go. So let's move to this being the new standard.
And we've still got the art at the back as it was at the moment. So it's still there with a little bio. Okay, fantastic. Yep. So when looking back at the past waves that we've had so far, the recent waves had some rather big names. And obviously you look at things way in advance, like we said. But does the fan reaction still surprise you? Or do you go like, hey, I knew that like that?
You never know. I think you have ones where you're like, no, there's definitely ones where like, no, like Quick Pick's perfect example. No one's going to see this one coming. And I'm more like, I can't wait to see people go, oh, wait, what the, huh? And then they'll decide if they like it or not. But first you're like, where did that come from? Like, yeah, you never quite know. There's sometimes it's obvious. It's though, oh, that character's going to outsell this. But I think we're really in the zone now of a lot of the characters that we're making where they're very unexpected. All of them are, yes. Aside from a few that people are like, okay, you need to make this guy to finish this list. You need to make this guy to finish this list. Like some of those are expected, but a lot of the other ones are like, we're in the realm now where they're all deep cuts. So which deep cut are we going to get? It could be one of 30. And I don't know which one we're going to get. So
it's like we're nearing the end of the vintage toy line where you've been able to make all of them. And these are all new characters that's never been made in toy form. And that is probably the most exciting part of the whole thing for me, is to get these things that you never, ever thought you would ever have. And that's just amazing. I just love that. So
yeah. It's a fine line though, because then you're also in a place where somebody else that's like, oh man, I'd really like to care ThunderCats. Here's the newest wave. They're like, I have no idea who any of these people are.
Well, I think that you've handled that perfectly in terms of balancing it with like Dream Master Mumra. That I never expected that. I told you that last time. It's like, where did this come from? But it's like keeping that fresh. You've still got your Mumra. You've still got you had Young Lion the other day, and it's like it's still keeping it fresh, but a little bit different than before. So I'm sure there will always be something that fans will recognize from each wave.
And that's honestly, I think we've talked about it before. That's what the Deluxe line is sort of really designed to be. It's like, all right, now how do we introduce a whole new group of people to this line? It's not the same as the Ultimates, obviously, packaging wise. It's not the same accessory wise or anything else. But you can that person that's like, I like ThunderCats, can walk into a store and get a Lion-O. I mean, I think that's key.
The thing that I like about the Deluxe line is it's I've had friends say I've always wanted to see this in retail now. Like this takes me back. Like I see people commenting on it, and it's like I never thought I'd see this in hand in a store with this vintage backing, all those black and white dots and splattered at the back. That is exciting to see.
Yeah.
We don't have it here on this side of the world yet. Hopefully, we will get it one day. But it's still exciting to see people get that in the store. So with the deluxe characters, these are the same sculpts as the ultimates. Well, most of them, I'm assuming. Like Lino is a different story, but
Rhino's a different story. Obviously, when we were doing the LED and this, it was like, all right, where the line, I think we talked about this before again, but where the line has evolved to sculpt point of view wise in terms of being animation accurate, felt like that Lino just no longer fit in with how the line was being put together. So if we're going to bring Lino back out, can we improve it? And so that was the goal.
Well, you did. I love this. I love the way this character moves. That Lino moves like I've never expected him to move. But I'll get to that in a bit. I wanted to check with you with the past waves. When it comes to alt versions of characters that you've released, like the younger portraits, like a young Jaga or a young Cloudus, and some side characters like Kano, which wasn't featured with the Cloudus release. Do you monitor collector feedback to see if this is really something that people want, or do you have a plan to release characters like that somewhere down the line?
I mean, I think, like I said, once again, you're getting into the deep cuts. So we're looking at all the deep cuts at this point. So yeah, is it somewhere on a list of like characters that haven't been made? Yes. If all of a sudden there's a giant fan outpouring for a certain character, are we going to pay attention to that? Yes. But I would argue that right now the feedback that we get is like, if let's just say there's 30 characters that haven't been released, everybody's got 3% of the vote. It's sort of across the board because everybody's got their favorite. And it's like, there's very rarely where like one or two of them are rising above the others, except for, I would argue, like we need this person to finish this team. We need this person to finish this team. And it's like, all right, yeah. Sort of like when Luna and Amok finally came out, people are like, oh, finally. Okay. We've been waiting,
And now there's only 2 Lunatics left that needs to get made if you don't count Queen Luna. And talking about those Lunatics, we've got Tagmak that's due and Red Eye that's due. Now, Red Eye himself, he's a character that in the vintage line, he had a prototype that was advertised back in the day, but it never saw the light of day. It was never released. And you now have an opportunity to release a toy version and a cartoon version. Is that something that you're looking at to like, because that's very different. That version of him was like very, very different. Is that something that you are possibly considering somewhere down the line? We want the toon version first, but the LJN one is not.
I think once again, as we said earlier, I think first let's get the cartoon version out at some point. Well, I can't say where, but it would be a shame to not make him, right? Let's get that one out and let's see what happens. And if all of a sudden like there's a giant groundswell and we feel like that there's really a demand for it, then we can talk about it. But at least for right now, I wouldn't be looking at that as an AB. I would just be looking at that as one release.
Okay. So would you the LJN recolors that we've had in the past have been received very, very, very well. I mean, Jaga was a smash hit in my books the other day. Are we going to see some more LJN recolors down the line, or not in 13 or in 14?
Not in core waves, no. If you were to ever see, at least in the planning now, if there were to be LJN stuff, it would not be part of a core wave release.
Okay, so these could be exclusives or one-offs here and there.
Yeah. If we were to do them, but I got other plans. There's other things I want to make.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about new things that you're gonna make. But I'm just taking one step back to Comic-Con last year. Now that was fun. That was on you. 3 ThunderCats surprises. Will we have anything in 2025?
Of course, there's going to be something. Come on, it's San Diego Comic-Con. We always have something.
Okay, wonderful. So we've got an exclusive incoming or something. People start saving.
There's
You've got a few months
coming.
left.
There's some. There are actually going to be 2 items at San Diego.
In stock.
I'm trying to think of how I describe, and then I'm like, just we will have 2 different things, and they're both really cool. I think one, people will be like, oh, I didn't even think of that. That's really cool. And one will be like, oh, I've been waiting for them to do that. I knew they were going to do that at some point.
Okay. Are you sure you don't want to share your screen just for a millisecond?
Nope,
I'm
not.
still trying, Brian. I'm still trying to get something.
Yeah,
I need a little bit more.
You're like, one of these days I'm going to get a patch into Zoom where I can actually see your computer screen. Exactly. No, there's 2 ThunderCats items for San Diego. I will leave it at that. And then as we get closer to that, maybe we'll talk about, maybe we'll see some more. Who knows?
Okay, so last year's LEDs were like, if there was one way to follow up Cat's Lair, that was the way to do it. So
yeah,
just, do you have any samples yet of the upcoming? I know they're in production.
Yes, and the samples are not here at the office right now because they're at Josh's house. Josh, everybody knows Josh that works for me, I think, at this point. You've heard his name enough, but Josh moved just across the bridge not too long ago. So now the samples that normally go to his house that then come to the office have to go to his house. Takes a little longer to get to the office now. But yeah, no, they're great. They're great. They're great.
And the light up feature. You've got the wrong IP there, Brian.
Yeah.
We ho on this side.
Wrong tiger. We're talking about a lion here, not a tiger.
So the light up feature, it's like you push the head down, correct?
So how it works. So the original one was pushing down, and we've slightly modified it. So if you think about it this way, the chest cavity and everything comes out. There's the neck is on the ball joint, and that neck is attached to a post that goes like a cylinder post that goes inside the torso. And you can slide that whole thing out, and you can turn off and on the light feature and slide it back in. And then, it's fully articulated, but there's an on-off switch now rather than a push-on, push-off.
Okay.
And that's how it lights it up. And then where you can change the batteries or do whatever you need to do.
Okay. That's rather exciting. So there's no batteries. It doesn't come with batteries. You have to add in your own
It will
battery.
come with batteries. It'll come with batteries.
Okay.
Yeah. Nobody wants to get a toy that's supposed to light up and then it doesn't light up. You're gonna make me go to the store now and buy batteries. Yes, it will come with batteries. But at the same point, at some point, those batteries are going to go bad. So you need to be able to change the batteries out and everything else like that.
Okay. Now with these guys, you've got some lovely new treasures of Thundera that you sneaked in.
Yeah, last time we talked, you're like, what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, I can't say anything. And like the next week, you're like, oh, there they are.
And you ducked and dived through that conversation. I just should have seen right through you. So I'm gonna rewatch this interview when we're done. I'm gonna see. I wonder what Brian has not been saying to me today. So can we expect to see? So I'll look at this question again when we're done. Can we expect to see the final missing pieces of the treasure of Thundera somewhere down the line, like the bracelet of power or the thunderscope, and maybe the chest of Thundera where we can put the little treasures in?
Wouldn't it be a shame if that didn't happen?
Yes, it would. So let's move on. I can see your willingness to discuss this it's infectious, Brian. I just want to keep on talking about it. So I'll just change the subject.
Funny part is I keep thinking somebody's literally going to be like trying to zoom in on the reflection in my glasses or something, like, what do we see in the mirror zone on his screen? And it's like, all right, come on.
So,
but it would be a shame if that eventually doesn't happen.
Yes. Now we've touched on the deluxe figures. You mentioned that last time that there was going to be world building on the horizon, and there was a lot of world building with these deluxe figures that people can now get their hands on the older characters that has been out of print or out of stock for a while, or those that are very expensive on the secondary market. Can you reveal who is in Wave 2 and when Wave 2 is going to come out?
I'm not sure exactly when Wave 2 hits on shelf. Target is one of our key partners for this initiative with Deluxe and with ThunderCats. I want to say that it's more like April or May that the next wave comes out, but I'm not 100% sure because I got to think about it in Target's got like 4 main resets a year. There's actually 2 main resets and 2 smaller resets. I think it's more like May that the next wave is coming out. This wave, I know that this particular wave has been incredibly well received, which is great. I'm putting this out there as excitement to you guys as ThunderCats fans. Like it's been incredibly well received. It's already been reordered. The entire reorder has already been committed, and we're looking at actually a second reorder.
For Wave
So
1.
it's selling in a way that Ultimates do not sell. But part of that is because of the price point and where it's being sold at. Like you said, being able to walk into the store and pick it up off the shelf is a radically different proposition than here's this beautiful, elaborate, more expensive item that I have to order online and wait a year to get or wait 9 months to get kind of thing. So the response has been really, really strong to the first wave of Deluxe. Now, in a case like that with most retailers is if it's working, they want to keep it on shelf for a little longer.
Okay.
So I don't know the exact date when Wave 2 is coming in, but Wave 2 is in process right now. I don't know when we're going to announce those characters, but I think probably everybody can guess who one of them is. Like, what's going on here, guys?
I'm not gonna say anything.
And but also looking at stuff like that, like, is there moments where we can improve or do other things? So yeah, I don't know the exact date, but we're working several waves ahead right now because it is off to a wonderful start. And thank you to anybody and everybody that's bought them. And our hope, and I think what we'll see is over the next year, most likely, is that really becomes a gateway for a lot of other people to come backwards into the Ultimate line, seeing what else is out there and what they've missed, because there's no way a lot of those characters can all make it to shelf,
Yes, correct.
So
that is one thing that I've been talking to with one of my friends, and he's so excited about being able to actually go back and get characters that he has missed, or hoping that some characters that is no longer available, that he can still get his hands on them. So with what you've just mentioned is characters like Panthro and Jackalman, they were Wave 1 characters that did not have the pins, but will they be pinless now when they get introduced into the Deluxe line?
I will say that there's a really interesting thing that we're working on with Panthro. So maybe getting ahead of ourselves, right? So when Panthro comes back around, you are going to see a modified Panthro.
Okay, good.
But he's not in Wave 2. But there's a time and place for a modified Panthro. Same thing, like some of those Wave 1 characters, Wave 2 characters, it's like, okay, how do they fit into the line now? And what are we doing with them? So Panthro is a really interesting character in some of the things that we're looking at with Panthro. But there's also, I think, and I'm not trying to be, because at that retail reset, you're really only talking about it resetting twice a year. And figures being on shelf for close to 6 months in some cases. Like Deluxe is going to move at a slower pace, but I think there's also a couple characters that have just gotten astronomical in the secondary market, and that they do appear to be characters that people feel like are much more core than ancillary. And so that would be a really great place to bring them back.
Okay. So these I'm just gonna name drop like just a few names, like the Ghost Java. He was an exclusive. Is there something that can happen in Deluxe?
I mean, if you were just listening to what I said, that sounds like a really apt description, doesn't it?
Yes. So the twins, they are like sold out everywhere. They're going for crazy prices.
The twins are coming back. The twins are coming back on their own anyways. So the twins are coming back. We're working on a thing right now so that we can have additional inventory of the twins.
Okay,
so not to hurt any secondary resellers here, but we're working on bringing the twins back as we speak.
Okay, so if you don't have
there's something going on with the twins. All right.
Okay, excellent. And then I mean, a character like Tigra, we know, and I know you showed something like that, so I don't know if you pointed to his missing armband or something. But that
if you know that Invisible Tigra had the correct armband.
Yes, exactly.
So if Tigra were to ever show up again, it would make no sense that he doesn't have that.
Fantastic. Now you've got another line, like I said, with the world building, which is these vintage figures, the 5.5 that you did. Will we see them in store anytime soon?
Actually, I think that you will. If I am correct, there's going to be some that start showing up on shelves. Sometime in Q2. So yes, you will have a moment to see these on shelves.
So how did it finally happen for you guys to release this? Because you way back, like many years ago, you said that you had that vintage Mumra that you produced, but then something else happened and it never happened.
We're not going to go into all that. We're going to leave all the topsy-turvy history out of it. Yeah, we're bringing it back. Obviously, it just feels like something that should exist. Like, your peanut butter's in my chocolate, your chocolate's in my peanut butter, kind of thing. But I think the thing is really that it's getting right now it's a little bit like, oh, we've kind of got these characters once before, but it's like, all right, well, if we get into any other waves, it's all stuff you've never gotten before. And I think they're super fun. I think they look great. And I feel like it feels like a really cool place to mix worlds if you're playing with other items in that style on the shelf. So I don't know. I think they look great. I think they're super fun.
And we've got another wave coming in the near future as well.
Yes.
Can you reveal any?
That's a different, like the document that I was looking at is just what we're doing in Ultimates and Deluxe. That's a different document for what the line plan is with those guys and then I'd have to look at our scheduling software to know when it's actually coming out on retail shelves, and I don't have it at the top of my head right now.
That's fine. We've got lots of other stuff to talk about, and talking about something that happened last year at Comic-Con.
Not to be fair for everybody, like stuff is coming out right now, and I'm very excited. But I'm trying to finish Q3 and Q4 2026 right now. So when people are like, is this coming out next week? Or like, I cannot remember. Like until because I've already seen it last year.
Yes.
And so it's like I'm working on a 3-year spread, and then for the stuff once it's like done, like checked off and just into production, and when does it get in the warehouse and when does it go on shelf? Like usually for me at that point, like I've spent so much time with it that at this point it's like, oh, that comes out this week. Like, I've been looking at it for a year plus. So I apologize for not knowing, but at the same time, I'm like, I can't keep it all straight.
But Brian, it's easy. I think the next interview we're gonna do about what you're working on now, and then whenever it comes out, I'll publish the interview in 2 years' time. Then we don't have to worry
Sure.
about it. Then it's all fresh
All
and new
right.
information. So
Yeah, sure.
you had a big reveal at Comic-Con with Dungeons and Dragons, which was the vinyl Tiamat in Ultimate. Does that mean we can expect something similar for Thundercats in vinyl beast wise? I mean, somebody called Toy Hunters Hollow. I mean, I think his name is Rod.
That's Rod and Damien.
I think you might know
Rod and
him.
Damien. Yeah, they lived out here for a while. Really wonderful people. We get asked a lot about that, and I think I even said when we put out Tiamat that this is really sort of a dry run to see if the collectors would be interested in having sort of more large scale villains, but that they would be vinyl so that they're in the correct scale, but we don't have to pay for, quite honestly, if you're talking about Tiamat's the size of, or maybe even slightly larger than the Turtle Van. Like the tooling that goes into injection molding and the expense of that versus vinyl's much cheaper on the tooling side. The material cost is actually much higher, but we can get into some of that stuff easier. But the thing is that person going to allow that to sit on the shelf and feel cool about that? Or are they going to be like, no, it doesn't feel right? I don't know. And so until we really start getting that one out there and we start to see how people respond to it, like if all of a sudden once people get it in their hand, they're like, no, this is great, give me more. Then I think that's when we really start talking about, I mean, everyone keeps asking, the one people say is like Mad Bubbler would be the one. So I think it just really comes back down to when it lands and people start putting it in their collection, do people feel like this belongs together? Or do they feel like these are separate items?
Okay, I see. Okay, so we'll talk about that. Yes, we'll discuss that when that lands and see what the general public feedback is on that. And then I'll keep pushing you for a Black Widow Shark and a Tongosaurus and a Mad Bubbler and the rest of the gang in vinyl. That's perfectly fine. It did look fantastic.
I mean, the reality is, I think for anybody watching is like, I would love nothing more than to make all of it, but we all have to be, we have to pace ourselves. And we have to be realistic about whether or not enough people want it, because selling 100 of something isn't going to work.
Yes. Now, I think you might sell more than 100 of this, but can we expect a new vehicle for Thundercats in the near future?
You can expect a new vehicle, but I don't think it's what you're going to expect.
Okay. I don't know what to say to that.
No. How about this? We're gonna take that question and it would go this way. You're like, wait, what? So there's some stuff in the works, but it's not the same sort of craziness. So I don't know how to phrase it, but yes, there is a vehicle in the works.
Ultimate.
But it is not going to be Thunder Tank level.
Okay, but it's ultimate scale.
Yes.
Okay. Now
something more akin to Mandora's
Spike.
Yeah, something more in that vernacular.
Now I'm gonna throw this out here, and this is a subject that I know, and I just want a quick answer on this one. The double joints is something that you've introduced with Turtles Wave 12 with the double joints because of their affiliation or how they were with the vintage toys, that it actually does fit with that. So if you ever get to Thundercats, the 2011 version of the cartoon, the 6-inch toys also had double joints in them, not the smaller 4-inch one, but the 6-inch ones had double joints. Would that be something that you would consider, because the vintage toys had that type of character would have double joints for Thundercats?
Yeah, I think that would make complete sense in that vernacular.
Okay.
How do you feel about that? Is that something where you're like,
I would treat them differently. I would treat the waves differently because it's a different cartoon. So I know some people would like to mix it, and if it's different because of the double joints, even with turtles, I would treat the 2003 turtles different from the vintage ones, because they're different shows, so they won't bother me having double joints. But that's my personal opinion. So now I want to talk about something big. Now it's missing here
Okay.
because I'm only getting it in March, because I had to buy it from the UK to get it all the way to this side in the world. But you know what I'm talking about. That is, of course, Cat's Lair.
Cat's Lair, the behemoth.
Yes.
And I think it's one of those things where once it shows up, people are like, I knew it was big, but I didn't know it was this big.
I've taken a measuring tape behind me, and it is just gonna be so big. And I know that when you get it in hand, it's not even as big, it's even bigger. So this thing is shipping out now, and the response has been like fantastic. I've seen wonderful pictures. The shipping is a massive job. I mean, you're gonna only finish with this next month, correct?
Yeah. I mean, it finishes like the second week of February. But you're still talking about almost 2 months of solid shipping. And when people are like, it took 2 months to ship it, it's more like, no, the container comes in and they go out and another container comes in. So like even leaving the factory, I think it was 2 containers a week for 3 months or something like that, just leaving the factory, because you have to stage it because there's not enough room in the factories to pile it up. You literally have to complete them and get them out the door to make room for more. So even for us, it's like there's only so many containers that can come in, like a container a week or whatever, where you get them in, receive them, check them, label them, and get them out so that the next container can come in and the next container. But I think for us, it was about, because the first one started shipping around the 21st or 22nd of December. And we'll be done around the 15th or so of February. So almost 2 months of solid shipping just from our warehouse. That's not including partner warehouses or distributor warehouses.
So I'm gonna bring up something that might be perceived as a sensitive subject, but I do think it's important that people can hear from you. There has been some damages that's been reported with the way that the couriers have been handling this with, I don't know whether it's the forklifts or whatever it is that they have. What is your feedback to any collector that receives a damaged item with either damages inside or damages on the packaging and so on?
Let's sort of separate the two issues. So first off, no matter what we do, there's going to be some that arrive damaged. It's inevitable that something is in somewhere is going to be wrong. We always have damage replacement stuff on hand. So we factor in a certain percentage. We usually factor somewhere between 2 and 3% for damage replacement. It might even be a lost package that we have to replace. So anything plastic that's broken, that's the super easy part. Like I saw somebody's LED lights on work, and we have a Google sheet that I look at that talks about the things. Broken turret. There's a guy that got his where like one of the whole like flat planes of it was smashed, which was insane. All the plastic stuff, if you will, all that stuff to replace is very easy. And we've built in extras to have for that, because something somewhere is going to go wrong. There's always going to be a percentage that goes wrong. The more tricky issue is really the box. Because obviously when we handed those things off to our courier, those boxes aren't damaged. Those boxes get damaged in transit. So first off, let me, because we're going to break this into 3 parts. The first is anybody that's got a plastic problem, no problem. We're going to replace it. We always replace it. If you have a problem with a broken figure, we replace it. Anytime we make anything, we will replace it. The plastic is fine. As collectors, the packaging is important. So we got to talk about the boxes. So first off, if we're really talking about the boxes, I've got to quantify how big the issue is. So a lot of the stuff that we see online where it gets a very dramatic response, there's a giant hole in the box, right? A giant hole in the box is not somebody handling the box wrong. That's a forklift, or, it fell off a truck and landed on, I don't know, somebody's Stairmaster. Something went terribly wrong if it's got a hole that's 12 inches wide in the box. And that's clearly I don't want to say not on us, but it's not on us, but we still need to resolve it. But we've also be able to go to like, okay, how many problems do we have with the handling at the courier level? So then we got to quantify that and then talk to the courier about how we're going to resolve that. I would say though, of what I have seen and what's in our list and queue, the vast majority, 75% of the problems are all box condition issues, not plastic condition issues. And we're still running somewhere between, from what has been shipped and what's been arrived, we're running higher than normal, but somewhere between 1 to 2% of items having damage when they arrive. So that means 98 to 99% of them are showing up fine. But you see they're dramatic damaged ones. And of that, the vast majority of those damages are the inner boxes, the display box, not the shipping box. You know, the shipping box is the shipping box. We're not going to talk about the shipping box. So the question that normally follows this is, why didn't we pack it differently? Why didn't it have like the foam corners? The issue with this box is when you get those, yours, Eggman, you'll understand. When you get that box, like I could go get one, the cubic volume of that box, which means the length times the width times the height, the cubic space of that box so that we can hold the doors and the front of the playset in it, is in the totality of the cubic space, only an inch or two across the entirety of it, short inside the allowable shippable size. Obviously, you can ship anything of any size, but at a certain point, it moves over into industrial shipping. And that level of box, if we had put foam corners on all four corners, it would have kicked it up to a thing where we would have been like $400 something just to ship that one box. And that's with our rate. So we had to go no foam corners so that it could actually be shippable. That said, even if that like one of the ones I was looking at today, where it's, you know, it's got like a 12-inch gash that goes all the way through the box and into the playset. Like, even if I had put foam corners on that, that box still would have arrived. It would have gone through, it would have been annihilated. So what we're running into is, because the box is so formidable, and hopefully most people watching this has either seen it or gone someplace else. If you actually get to try to fit that box through your front door, which it barely fits, like, the box is so big and formidable that they are moving these things around by forklift, not by some dude just picking it up. And in doing so, we're running into a higher level of damage than we normally would get. So if you're talking about a box like the Thunder Tank, you can pick up that box and carry it around. It's big, it's heavy, but you can still pick it up and carry it around. The box for this thing, you can't
doesn't fit in the boot.
It doesn't fit in your trunk by any means. It's so big that it's just, what we're running into is just the difficulty of shipping something this large. And it's not that the pieces couldn't be broken up, because quite frankly, that's why there's two boxes. The second box, I think you've probably seen these photos online. The second box is still just as big, if not even ever so slightly bigger than the Thunder Tank box, much less the original box. So what we're just running into is just sheerly that box moving through all the stations of, it's got to get brought to this warehouse, and it's got to get on this plane, then it's got to get on this thing to get to this warehouse, to get on a truck. At some point, somebody with a forklift is banging one of these things. But if we really talk about it, we're honest, and same thing. It's like, we're somewhere between 1% and 2%, even with all the box damages. But if you see 30 posts online about damaged boxes, you're like, this is the worst problem ever. And it's like, oh, actually, this is a very small problem. And then now we need to work with the courier to figure out what they're going to do to help us resolve it. And then what we can do with the customer to help resolve it. The hardest part of this is going to be, if you're like, no, I really want a perfect box, and we want to try to get you a perfect box. How do I get you
How do
another
you get
perfect
it
box
back?
without going through the same exact process we just went through?
Yes.
And can you imagine trying to ship that box flat?
Oh
I
gosh.
can
Okay.
guarantee you if we ship that box flat, it'll get bent in half somewhere along the
Yes.
way.
Yes.
There's no way that thing's not arriving that. So that's not to say we're not going to solve it. I want you to have, you bought one and you want a nice box. All right, we're going to figure out how we solve it. The first thing we got to do is figure out how big the problem is, because we've still got another week or two of shipping these things out.
Yeah.
Okay, how many people have problems with shipping because of box damage? To wrap it up, we just have to sort of quantify how many boxes were damaged in shipping, talk to FedEx about what resolutions they're willing to offer, and then we can come back to people, talk about what they've got, and then what we can do to help them. Our goal is to get it there as safely as possible. And, like I said, in looking at it, it's like 98% of these things, if not more, are actually arriving fine. But just due to the sheer scale of it and the way they're moving it around, we're going to have some issues someplace. And I'm sorry it's your playset, because I know that you were excited about it and it showed up and you couldn't wait and you had to stay home from work to sign for it for FedEx, and then it showed up and it's got a giant hole in the side. There can be nothing more deflating and frustrating than that, especially if you waited a year and 3 months for this thing. But we'll sort it out. We'll get it straight. Like, we're not trying to screw you over, but we also need to quantify how many we need to solve.
At least, speaking with you about this, now my package is taking an extremely long route. I mean, it went from the factory to the US, and then from the US is going on a ship to the UK. From the UK, it's
It
got to
probably
get
didn't go to the US. Yours, because it came from the UK, went straight from the port in Hong Kong to UK.
Okay. So from there, it still has to get on a plane and then fly its way all the way to South Africa. And if there's anybody from South Africa watching this, they know how some of our courier services, they just don't care. So I sincerely hope that it arrives in perfect condition. But I'm also understandable that things like this happen, and I'm comfortable knowing that if there's any damage on the inside, I can just contact Super7 or the person.
Yeah, if you got, and I want to make that clear, like, for everybody, for every toy that we make, anything, like, if you get a broken part or something that's not right, we'll replace it. Why wouldn't we? Like, of course we're going to replace it. So, yeah, I mean, I what I'm seeing, the majority of the damages that I'm seeing are sort of forklift transit level damages, and they look dramatic. And those are the ones that, like, in the photos, you're like, what the, like, this thing showed up and it got annihilated. It's like, yes, it did. And the law of averages, unfortunately, tell me that no matter what, there's going to be some that get damaged. That's why we make damage replacement stuff. That's why we have an extra percentage of things sitting in the warehouse that came in this exact same shipment. Well, they're not sitting yet. They'll be in the last container, because I can guarantee you there's also somebody whose package just doesn't show up. Like,
Yes.
or one half of it shows up. They're like, I got one box, but I didn't get the other box. And that's got to be terribly frustrating for that person. But unfortunately, there's going to be somebody that happens to, but I've got one over here to fix the problem. So
Yes.
I just want to be upfront about that no one's going to get screwed just because your box showed up and it was annihilated. You're not out of luck.
Excellent. So that's very important. If there's anything that's happening to your cats Lair, contact Super7.
Yes.
They're definitely going to help you.
Yeah, if you contact customer care at super7store.com, you will be, in this case like this with the cat's lair, you will be put into literally a Google Sheet database of who it is, what their problem is, and what their order number was, address, everything else like that. And then as we finish it going through, then we'll sort of total it up. Like, okay, I'm making it up, like 12 people need replacement cannons, and 2 people need replacement floors, and 3 people have LEDs that aren't working. Okay, cool. all right, let's take care of everybody that needs this, everybody that needs this, everybody that needs this, everybody needs this. The plastic part's the easy part. Then it's the majority right now is, all right, now box damages. Now, what are we going to do about that? How many box damages do we have? What can we do about it? All those kind of things. So we just need to get sort of the whole data and then we can sort it out.
Now, on the subject of Casley, at Comic-Con, you had that that print out on the table of the grass and the sand and all of that. That was it really just made this whole it created the like a perfect
Did it tie the
thing
room
for
together?
example. Yes, it did. Yes. So is there any way to get our hands on that? I know you mentioned it might be possible, but
No, that's a good idea. What we should probably do is just make it a digital file that you can download and print out on your own. It's a giant printout, so you'll have to go to like a Kinko's oversized printer or something like that. But that's a cool idea. Hold on, let me write it down. File or cancel.
it's like a little bonus here. Thanks for buying Cats Lair. Here you go.
It's not even thanks for
this on.
buying it. It's just we'll put it probably we can announce it, but we'll put it in like the resources or something like that, and you can just anybody can download it.
Excellent. Now, playsets, you said that let's get Cats Lair out first, and then we'll talk about the next one. So it's almost out the door.
It's
Is there
almost, it's
something
not
in
out the door
future?
yet. There are no plans at the moment for any giant playsets like this. And I would say that this was a massive undertaking and it's lovely and it's amazing and all that. But right now there's nothing on the calendar for another giant playset. I know
Not for the
everybody's
next-
got their list, but
Yes.
nothing right now. Nothing right now.
Okay. Okay. We'll talk again when we do that future interview about the wave 17 that you're currently working on, when we plan the next
Exactly.
5 waves. So from big things to small things. Now your reaction ThunderCats have been very well received. But you also recently launched a Reaction Plus line for other IPs. Is this on the cards for ThunderCats?
It's not something that we're actively working on right now. Once again, not to sound totally crass, but it's like there's a level of management here. It seems like most everybody's really interested in the 7-inch line, whether that's be Ultimates or Deluxe, and that's really where the focus is. We've also got the vintage line that we're working on and some other stuff. So I think that's really where we're focused for right now. With Reaction Plus, that's really sort of centered around G.I. Joe as a launching off point. Obviously, we've announced Micronauts. Sorry, my phone was ringing. And but that's sort of in the world. The G.I. Joe articulation is actually downstream from the original Micronauts articulation. So that really feels like the world that it should be in and some characters that it should be in. That's sort of the world that we're in right now with that stuff. We're not going crazy outside the box with Reaction Plus right now, because quite frankly, it's just really starting to come to market and we're still just trying to understand, what's the demand size for that.
Okay. So are we going to get some new Reaction ThunderCats, new characters? We need a few.
There's a few. There's nothing in the immediate future. We talk about it a lot. But I think right now we're really heavily focused on what's happening in Vintage and Deluxe and Ultimates.
Okay. Silverhawks has just shipped wave 5 now with Copper Kid and his Space Racer. Is there wave 6 not wave 6, wave 7 in the near future for Silverhawks?
We've got some stuff in the works for Silverhawks. Can't really talk about it right now. We got some stuff. Much like ThunderCats is we've spaced out ThunderCats a little bit. We've spaced out Silverhawks. A lot of the ThunderCats collectors are also the same people that are collecting Silverhawks. So we're trying to be cognizant of that. And same thing with TigerSharks. Like I know everybody's ready for us to get to TigerSharks, but as we space stuff out, it's like it's sliding. The schedule. Thunder TigerSharks is sliding around the schedule a little bit. It's still something that we're working on. We've still got a lot of progress made on it, but where and when it actually shows up is still kind of TBD.
Okay.
If we go way back to several years ago when we announced at sort of PowerCon, like here's the exact schedule of everything, that was back when we were making 4 figures a wave and waves were coming out every 3 months. You know, I would say that we're in a slightly different environment these days, so everything's sort of stretched out a bit, but there's stuff still working on that. Yes.
Yeah. Would you say that Silverhawks would be ideal for the deluxe format as well?
We've talked a lot about whether or not that would work, quite frankly, you know, and whether or not that customer is there for that. It's a very interesting proposition. You know, there's this, it's an interesting fine line when you talk about stuff that lives at more mass retail. And we've talked about it in terms of collectors as well. Like the person watching this video, especially if you've made it to here, which is like an hour plus in, which is terrifying because I talk way too much, is that you know, you're there for the deep cuts. You're there for all of it. You know, like I am ready for the wackiest of the wacky. What can you give me? Like you know, you're a junkie and you're looking for heroin, right? where that person does go to Target and does go to Walmart to buy their toys completely, but that the mass majority of people going there are looking for things that are more high level. And unfortunately, the data proves it out. And we've talked about it before. You're like, why is there yet another Lion-O? Because quite frankly, another Lion-O, as much as you're like, this is the 6th Lion-O and I don't need another Lion-O. You don't. But that other person, they want Lion-O. And they don't want Nayda. And they don't want Safari Joe. And they don't want Crusher. They just want Lion-O and Mumra. And that's all they want. And there's, unfortunately, like I said, we have to be aware that the reality is no matter how much we love this, is that more people love that than people that love the deep cuts. So you have to keep both of them in balance. So when we talk about something like Silverhawks in Deluxe, is that person, I think we can all say that the amount of people that know who Lion-O and Mumra is radically different than the people that know who Quicksilver is.
I didn't know who Quicksilver was until until I started talking to you.
All right, so that's nail in the coffin from Eggman. There we go. But it's true. It's like, just because I love it doesn't mean everybody else loves it. And, you know, it's sort of, when you start talking about stuff that has to work at mass retail, you have to be a little bit more top of line, unless that line becomes mass accepted. I will use an example. G.I. Joe Classified. That line has moved into mass acceptance. So now you can make really obscure deep cuts, and that person will go to Target to get it because they've gotten this wide mass audience to buy into the line as a whole. Where normally what you would see is like, oh, here's Snake Eyes and Cobra Commander and some of the other stuff. You're not going to see somebody walk in there and go, that normally wouldn't be collecting that line, but because they bought in that line, go in there and be like, if you started the line out with Chuckles, they'd be like, why would I buy this? But they've invested themselves in the whole of the line. So now they are looking for Chuckles. So it's always that fine line between, does the line exist just with the hits, or does the line finally catch mass acceptance to where you can go wide for everybody? And I would argue that most toy collectors can look at toy lines on the shelves and say, most of those lines do not hit that sweet spot of mass acceptance and stay mostly at the greatest hits. And so if we're talking about that as a product segmentation thing, like our business side is don't force deep cuts in the mass. Keep deep cuts at Ultimates level, fan level. That's a wonderful business. Stay where we're doing. Make sure you get the product you want. And then what happens at Target? Well, let's give them the hits.
Okay, that makes sense.
And so when we've talked about Silverhawks, we go back and forth on whether or not that customer is going to be there for that property.
Okay. So I mean, you did something with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers where you brought out deluxe versions in collaboration with Hasbro. I don't know if those are at retail, but those 6 figures were like a special exclusive that you could buy through them.
Yeah, that was exclusive to Hasbro Pulse.
Yes, that had a nice shine to it. It wasn't the metallic like the vac metal that we used to with Silverhawk, but it had a different shine to it.
Yeah.
So is that something that you could do with Silverhawks if that was an option to release them shiny but not vac metal as a deluxe option?
Yeah, so that it could be production friendly for a wider audience. I think possibly. I'm not sure that the world needs a third version of those figures, quite frankly. Like you got the cartoon ones, then you got the vac metal toy ones. I'm not 100% sure that the world is like, I can't wait for a third version of that Quicksilver. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. And I don't want to say no. But I would say at this point, really, when we're talking about Deluxe, we're focused on what's happening within ThunderCats right now.
Okay. So we've got lots of Deluxe coming. We've got Wave 12 that's out now. We've got more coming.
We've got more Deluxe coming. Lots will be, let's slow our roll.
We've got Deluxe coming. ThunderCats Wave 12 is out now for pre-order. When does it close? At the end, somewhere at the end of February.
A month from now, it came out last week. So.
And then there's also the vintage toys that's available now on your website. You've got the new Silverhawks reaction, those shiny, beautiful little
super shiny and beautiful
toy inspired ones. They are available now as well. There's more reaction Silverhawks planned for later in the year, I hope.
I think there's a second wave to sort of round out the core team. What happens beyond that, I'm not sure.
Okay. Is there any parting words that you would like to leave us with? Any words of wisdom?
There's just a lot of exciting things that we've got planned for ThunderCats. What's so tricky is just like, it's still methodically got to move through production, move to getting out the door, arrive into people's hands, and then have the next one shows up. Like, I would just say that we've got, like I said, many, many, many more waves of everything planned. We've got a lot of really cool, fun stuff coming. So, just thank you for supporting ThunderCats. And we've got a lot more here. And I think a lot of really cool, exciting characters that you haven't thought about that look amazing as toys that you're just gonna be like, this is the coolest line ever.
It's definitely the coolest line ever. Thank you so much, Brian, for taking the time to chat with me and for giving us some feedback on ThunderCats, the future of ThunderCats, and looking back at your greatest hits, which I soon hope to have here behind me. And we'll be catching up again very soon.
Definitely. Thank you, Eggman.